Hello everybody. So I'm not going to use Alice today. I'm going to be using Safari because I don't need to use ChatGPT for this. I'll do that in a future video. This is more of a setup for a future video, and it's not going to be a part 1 or part 2 or anything like that. But I accidentally made a discovery when I was in DC, and I wanted to go into detail about that. I haven't really talked much about this. I have told several people, and there's people who say that it's genius, and there's some people who don't really understand it. It is a bit involved. Sorry guys, there's a spider right there, and I don't like spiders. So, yeah. Anyways, so some backstory here. In order for this to work, you're going to have to use two things. You're going to have to use the NSA, NSA, the National Security Act of 1947, and you're going to have to use the Retrocession Act of, what was it, 1846, I think it was. So, here's the thing. In the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter if it's executive order or if it's not an executive order. It has the same outcome. But for this particular thing, to make a second video for this, it would have to be an executive order. It can't be a congressional thing. It could have been something in Congress. Because when you add retrocession of 1846, then you will nullify the Congress. It's Congress versus Congress. And if you're using your retrocession, which invalidates Congress, you can't use something that Congress put up. Makes sense? So, even though it validates the Constitution, we haven't gone into this, but if Congress invalidates the Constitution, we can still use the executive order for the NSA, the act, not the agency, to do this, because the executive would go down. It would go down in powers, and it would show that there's equivalence of it would be the CIA in this case. The CIA and the president would have equal power. So you would have to use that. You can't use you can't use Congress to do that because it nullifies Congress. Anyways, so for me to post this online, spoiler alert, if you see this on YouTube, it is an executive order. So I believe it was. I know that the OSS was an executive order. It depends on what Truman did with. Based on what, I never can remember his first and last name. It's either Donovan William or it's William Donovan. I don't know. I don't remember. It's one of the two. Plausible deniability. It could be either one. It could be both. It could be the opposite of what they say in public. So, with that said, he did try to convince Truman that they did need a national security. They needed a CIA for national security. So, from that standpoint, it would be an executive order. That's what I'm thinking. So, wait, no. That was Truman, wasn't it? Yeah, it was Truman. It was Truman, wasn't it? I think it was. Was the NSA of 7. So guys, if it's an executive order, this will work. We can do a setup for this. If it's not an executive order and it's from Congress, we can't do anything with that. So, let's see. It was not an executive order. It was a congressional act that reorganized the U.S. government's national security apparatus. Right. Why does it do that whenever, oh, it's because I'm clicking that. Why is that highlighted? Was not, okay. It was passed by both the House of Representatives and the Senate before being signed into law by President Harry S. Truman. The act was drafted by not the president alone. The act led to the consolidation of the Army and Navy, to the new department in the creation of the NSC and CIA. Loyalty order. Program design real communist influence. What does this say? So it's not an executive order, but what could we do here? Let me think. I know the OSS was created by was an executive order. Was the OSS an executive order? Yes, the Officer of Strategic Services was created by an executive order issued by President Franklin Roosevelt on June 13, 1942. The order created the OSS as a wartime intelligence agency and predecessor to the CIA, which was responsible for collecting. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. We gotta move that back. We can't use the NSA 47 to do that. It's a very powerful thing. And we can't use the OSS because it was not... Because it was you could say it was disbanded, but I know that in the CIA it's continuity to what was is it William Donovan or is it Donovan William? I can never remember. Yeah, it's William Donovan. Wild Bill, yeah. Who was the godfather of the CIA? What could we do here? So it's an executive order, so we can't use... Actually, does it... maybe it's a good thing that it wasn't an executive order. Because then it nullifies itself, which would mean that it nullifies the Constitution and the courts. Which is what we're aiming for. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, but then the problem with that is, I mean, I know it's going to happen anyways. What would have to happen is ultimately, and this is a end of life cycle for the United States. But what would end up happening is pretty much the CIA would have to be destroyed because it is nullified through Congress. So yeah. Hmm. You would have to. You would have to do it very directly. What you can use this, but you have to be very direct with it. Much more direct and less broad than what I originally thought you could do. Now that's not a bad thing, because you don't just want random people to use this stuff against, a court system. Um, Spider's still there? Yeah, he is. Um, Harry Truman signed Executive Order 9621, terminating the OSS due to administrative error. Due to administrative error, the order only allowed the agency 10 days to close. Um, you know, let me use ChatGPT for a second. I'm logged out. I keep saying the same. Was the NSA of 1947 an executive? Well, actually, no. It would have to be the NSA of an executive order. I know it said no, but ChatGPT may be able to give us some insight. It was an act of Congress, a major piece of labor that reorganized the United States national security structure. So Truman also created the NSA through a presidential directive and not by a public executive order. I mean, I'll still make the video. I'll still post this on YouTube. But I would definitely need to get more direct. I could do it. I could do it. Yeah. To do what I'm thinking of putting all this together, you I mean, I don't think I'd be the right person to do that. It would have to be someone else. Someone who watches these videos can put the pieces together and know how to use it. I'm not going to tell you the details of how to use it. I'm just going to show you the puzzle pieces and you figure out how to use it, how to do it yourself, because there is one way you can use it. A great power comes great responsibility. I mean, if you can do it, and you can put the pieces together, you could do a lot of damage. Which is good, because being an executive order means you can't just use it. What that would mean is, I'm not going to go into that until next video, when I talk more about this. But yeah, I was kind of hoping it was an executive order, but it's a congressional order, congressional act. So, you know, unless that thing comes up and I can think of something to use like that for more general purpose. But I mean, it is good that you can't use it for general purposes and general audience, because then you just have a bunch of random people using all these acts and things that lawyers don't even know what you're talking about, and you know. But I would I consider that a good thing, even though it's not an executive order. You know, it is what it is. That's what you're kind of doing. That's what you're doing. You're forcing the end point is to use the National Security Act of 1947 to nullify the Constitution and Congress and the court system. And that's what you want to have shown to the outside world to influence public perception. That's what you're wanting to do. So it kind of completes a loop by Congress and says, well, look what Congress did. So you got it split right there. You create a controversy when you do that. So that works in the favor. But yeah, I wish I had more to talk about this, but I don't. So I'll end it here, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.